Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Mob Spot. Our featured guest today is Hector Berrellez. Did I pronounce it right?
Yes.
Berrellez, and my English-speaking friends would call it Berrellez. Hector Berrellez, welcome to the channel. Bienvenidos.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. Now, before we get started, I have a ton of questions for you, Hector. Off camera, we've been talking, and you've agreed that you're an open book. Your answers forthcoming are going to be sincere, and I'm not going to hold back on any. But before we start, I want you to tell the audience briefly the channel that you have. You have a channel, your own channel on YouTube, and you have a book, the book that we're looking at here. Can you tell us?
Yes, my channel on YouTube is known as The Last Narc. And again, there, as I'm doing here, I talk a lot about my experiences with the DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration. I served as a special agent and supervisor both with that agency for 27 years. And yes, as you stated, I have a book, The Last Narc, which you can get on Amazon.
Amazon. It's funny, when I think of you, I think of The Last Narc, porque your channel, your book, same name, same title, so I bet a lot of people are going to refer to you as The Last Narc. There's an LAPD officer that I don't know if you know him, Tony Moreno. He's inherited the name Pac-Man based on the movie Colors. So now everybody calls him Pac-Man. And in your case, you're with all due respect, you're the last narc. I want to start with your upbringing. Where are you from? ¿De dónde eres? Where do you hail from? And can you give a brief account of where you grew up and how you became a law enforcement officer?
I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, in actually the barrio of South Tucson. I went to high school, all my education was there. I went to the University of Arizona. As a matter of fact, while at the University of Arizona, I met some very important, I guess, or big people. I didn't know there would be big people back then, like Linda Cordova, which is Linda Carter, Wonder Woman. I met her.
Yeah.
I also met Linda Ronstadt, who became a very famous singer, as we know. And I also met Geraldo Rivera, of all people, there at the University of Arizona while going to school there.
Really?
While at the University of Arizona, as we all know, back in the 70s, the war in Vietnam was flaring. It was getting bigger and bigger all the time. Mm-hmm. So I got basically inducted into the U.S. Army out of the university. I didn't know what I was getting into, but thank God I survived. I got out, and in getting out of the Army, of course, I had the GI Bill, and that helped me complete my 4-year degree in business administration. I didn't know what to do with myself. I tried to get a job at the mines, which is the highest paying job you can get in Arizona. They were not hiring, so I was looking through the unemployment section of the newspaper, and I saw that they needed police officers at the South Tucson Police Department. So I said, maybe I should go apply. So I did. I went in and they gave me a test, and also after I passed the test, an oral interview. And they were very delighted that I had, the military experience. And they said, yeah, we'll hire you. So I went through an academy and I became a cop. Now, I did not want to be really a cop. I thought that once I got my feet back on the ground and got my bachelor's degree, that I would go on and go to law school and become an attorney. However, when I got the police job, it got into my bones. I love being a cop. I love the fact that I was protecting people. I loved it. So I did a great job, and before too long, I was hired as a detective in the homicide division. And I started investigating homicides. With that background, then I went to the state police, which is Arizona Department of Public Safety, where I worked as a highway patrolman and I did some narcotics work.
DPS.
DPS, Arizona Department of Public Safety, where Paco Marcel, our mutual friend, worked. So while there, I worked undercover on some supposedly small cases, but I made them bigger because where I would go in to bust somebody on a 10-ounce heroin case or on a 5-ounce heroin case, I would wait and ask for more, and I would get kilos of heroin. The DEA noticed my ability to do this, so they recruited me into the DEA.
How old were you?
27 years old when I went into the DEA. Went to the DEA and I started working a lot of by bus cases, undercover cases, mainly short term, where an informant would take me in and the defendant or the suspect would bring me heroin, cocaine, what have you, and we busted him. But as I got more experienced, I got to work longer undercover cases and in foreign assignments. So it wasn't unusual for me to report to work and say, hey, they would need you in Colombia or they need you in Mexico. And I would ask him, what am I wanted there for? What am I going to be doing there? We don't know. They will give you your assignment when you get there. When you get there, report to this place, report to this officer or supervisor, what have you. They will let you know what you'll be doing while you're there.
Was your military background a big plus in getting you assigned to DEA?
Well, yes, because remember when I went into the military, I was 19 years old. I didn't know anything. All I knew was how to play a guitar, and I loved playing in a rock and roll band. That was my life back then. I had no issues. I had no problems other than trying to, get good grades and play in a band. And I had a little part-time job working in one of the major stores as a produce clerk. So I had no complications in my life. I was single. I was 19. I love music. I still love music. I still play the guitar. And my whole thing was, my rock and roll band, really. And I never continued my rock and roll career or my musical career because our singer, Art Meyer, who was a very good singer and had the voice for us to record, was killed in Vietnam. So that took it out of me because I had to bring his body home to his family and everything else. Really, it was very hurtful, and it's all in my book. So I didn't continue because of that. I didn't continue pursuing a professional career in music. So now here I am, 1973, with the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA.
So when you went to Vietnam, did you see combat?
No.
You didn't?
Zero.
Okay, when you got out of Vietnam and DEA ultimately recruited you, were you excited about the action that you were going to see working with DEA?
As a matter of fact, no, I wasn't looking forward to any danger. When I got out of the service and I didn't see any action or anything in Vietnam because I was assigned on a medical transport. Basically, we were bringing in the wounded and also the dead. My MOS, which is a military occupational specialty, was 91B20, which is combat medic.
Okay.
And the only reason I survived and I didn't see any action or combat was I was fortunate enough to be assigned to a medical evacuation unit. I worked like a male nurse, like with doctors and stuff like that.
The reason I ask you is because our mutual friend, Frank Paco Marcel, he worked with the Prison Gang Task Force, and Paco wrote a book recently, and that's a book that people can order on Amazon as well. And in the book, I believe it's on page 35, he mentions you. He mentions you being in several firefights on the border with cartel guys, with guys involved in drugs in the U.S. and in Mexico. And he kind of laughed and said, when I reminded Hector about this, Hector's been involved in so many shootouts, he just kind of forgot. So I chronicled it in my book. And Paco, to this day, I believe, keeps in touch with you. Do you remember those days?
Yes, and he's right. I mean, I was involved in back then and so many shootouts that some of them I forgot.
Yeah.
I run into people sometimes, DEA guys, and they say, "Hey, remember when you killed, when we were involved in that shootout where you guys killed 7 guys?" And I said, "Yeah, now that you bring it up, I remember that happened in Mexico at such and such a place." And people that are around me say, "Hector, you never told me about that shootout." I said, "Because I forget about him." And the mind works this way. Whenever you're in a very dangerous, traumatic situation, your mind wants to shut it off, so you have trouble remembering years later details of a shooting, or that you even forget the whole shooting.
Wow. See, that goes to show you how the mind working for good for the law enforcement community processes differently than the mind that works for evil. I remember details of my stuff,
Right.
and you try to forget some of that stuff. So you
Right.
probably, as the saying goes, you probably forgot more than most people remember.
Exactly, and mainly because my upbringing was in church. I was a altar boy at
So
my
was I.
Catholic church. My dad never had any weapons at home. We never went hunting. I never killed any animals or anything like that. So my first experience with weapons was in the military. My very first experience in using weapons, and I got trained for, of course, it was called RVN. RVN training in the military back then was the Republic of Vietnam training. So I got all the training and all the big weapons, the M60s, the M79 grenade launchers, all of that. I was ready and trained to basically to be involved in combat, because I was a combat medic. I was going to be in the field, except I got, somehow the Lord saved me, and He put me in this medical transport unit, which saved my life. Or else I probably would have been killed, because the highest kill rate in Vietnam was the radio operators, and the second was the medics. They would take out the medics. I mean, those are the guys that they would first hit whenever the Viet Cong would attack our units.
Yeah.
So I probably would have been dead. Okay, so thank the Lord, and I'm a very big believer of God. God had a purpose for me.
Yes.
I didn't know at the time what the purpose was, but now I think I have an idea what I was going to be involved in later, after I got out of the Army.
I have a special person in my life that continues to remind me that God does not make mistakes. So I'm with you. I'm with you on that. So you're in your early 20s, and you couldn't get a job working 9 to 5 in the fields, in the mines, what have you. And so you saw the opening for police officers. After you became a police officer, your desire to continue in that field and then to work with DEA, tell me what motivated you. What was your reason for continuing in the field of law enforcement?
Well, when I was a city cop, one of my younger brothers became a heroin addict. And he was never a dealer, he was just an addict. So basically, my brother would steal cars and drive them to Mexico and trade the stolen car in for whatever, quarter ounce of heroin or whatever, for his personal use. So he got arrested numerous times for GTA, Grand Theft Auto. And every time he would get arrested, my dad would call me, and I was a policeman. He says, "Please, Hector, go with me to your brother's hearing." So I would see my brother be brought in chains. And my dad, I would see tears come out of my dad's eyes. And it hurt me a lot. I was mad at my brother for doing what he did and for being a drug addict. I was mad. But I bled inside when I saw the tears come down my dad's eyes in court.
You
And he
were
would
close-
just
you were
and he
close
would
to
just
your
take
dad.
take the tears off to see his son in chains. And so my dad told me, he says, "Help me find the guy that basically turned my son at the age of 12 into a heroin addict." My brother started shooting heroin when he was 12 years old. And I tried to get him and arrest him, but he found out I was after him, so he left the state, and I never could arrest that guy when I was a cop now. So that's what motivated me to join the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, because of the suffering that addiction causes. Believe me, I don't hate addicts. I don't hate them. They are sick people. The ones I hate are the drug dealers that make money off of them. And I hated them more when I worked undercover and found out that they didn't even use the drugs themselves.
So what do you say to the dicho, to the saying that there wouldn't be a supply if there wouldn't be a demand?
What I say is that is a correct term. We need more in this country to work with our addicts to get them out of addiction, with our homeless to put them in homes, educate them, and be very hard on those that are making money off of these souls. We see them in downtown LA. We see them sleeping on the streets. They're zombies. Those people are not normal. I would say 95% of them at least are severely addicted to drugs. What are we doing for them?
Right. There's many people that distinguish between a guy that murders, a trigger man, for example, an actual murderer, and a person that sells drugs. They say that a drug seller should not be doing that much time because they don't kill people.
Here's my answer to that. The Mexican drug cartels have killed hundreds of thousands of people with their drugs, with the fentanyl especially now. When a person gets in a car right now and drives under the influence of alcohol and he kills somebody, the charge is vehicular manslaughter, which is a form of murder. Mm-hmm. That man gets a lot of time. But yet, here's where we're wrong. When a pusher sells fentanyl to a drug user and the user drugs of an overdose, why are we not charging that pusher with homicide, with murder, because he caused that guy to die?
Right.
Not only that, these cartel guys that are bringing in millions of pills of fentanyl, why don't we charge them seriously with a major crime like a terrorist act, where they can, serve time, lifetime sentences? I think we're not hitting it right. We don't have it right when it comes who we should punish. Stop putting these people that are using drugs in jail. They're victims of this whole thing. That's my contention. And I saw it in my own family. Right. I lived it. So I know.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we live in a society where anybody that does something wrong is a victim, even the drug pushers. And that's another story. So now you've been introduced to Latin America by way of working for the DEA. You've gone to countries, Colombia, Mexico. Did you at some point become proficient or an expert, if you will, in Mexican drug trafficking organizations?
Of course, because as a young agent, I was sent undercover to a lot of Central, Latin, and South American countries. I've traveled to all these countries undercover. What got me by was the fact that I speak Spanish so well, because my parents were from Mexico. And I'm a cowboy. I dress like a cowboy. They like to dress like I do. I have horses and everything else. I grew up with animals.
¿Qué parte de México?
My parents, I'm not from Mexico. I've never been lived in Mexico,
right.
Except when I was with DEA. My parents were from Sonora. But I am truly Mexican American. I believe in this country. I was educated here, and I love this country. I believe in the U.S. Constitution. I'm a religious person. I think I have a good moral compass. I don't want to hurt anybody or steal from anybody. I'm a very straight guy. I grew up, like I said, in the church and being an altar boy and everything. I never saw a weapon or killed anybody until I went to work for our government.
Yeah. So before I get into you're a very controversial person in the law enforcement community today. As a result of certain events that took place, and one specifically that we're going to touch on. But before we get there, how did you get to the position in the DEA of being assigned to be the lead investigator in a very high-profile murder torture case? How did that come about? Explain your credentials.
Well, the way it all happened was they brought in an elite group of investigators from New York, very good investigators that have been investigating the Italian mob. They brought him in to investigate the murder of Camarena.
Kiki.
None of them, Kiki Camarena, none of them spoke Spanish.
Hmm.
And I was undercover in Mexico, being involved in some of these shootouts that we talk about. And they brought me in. And they said, Hector, he says, tell us about these drug lords carrying credentials of the federal police in Mexico, of the DFS, credentials of being Mexican federal judicial police agents. Who gives them the badges? How do they get this stuff? And I said, first of all, I want to make it very clear to you. They don't just carry the credentials and the badges. They have the positions. I said, what? We don't understand it. What do you mean they have the positions? Okay, you guys know who John Gotti is, right? He said, yeah, we were investigating John Gotti. And I said, okay. It's like John Gotti given a supervisory position of the FBI. He doesn't just get the badge and credentials. He's a real supervisor in the FBI and has 40 FBI agents assigned to him. That's what it's like in Mexico. They couldn't believe it. They didn't understand the culture of corruption in Mexico that I was dealing with working undercover over there. And they go to me and they say, it's that bad. It's really that bad, I said. So the whole government over there is basically being paid off by the drug lords. And I said, the drug lords run the country.
Yeah, there's many that don't want to hear that. A lot of people, especially from Mexico, they get tired of hearing that, the good people, but there's narratives, there's agendas, and then there's the truth. Now, you strike me as a man that was in search of the truth, and I think that somebody above you saw that in you, because otherwise, why would they appoint you?
Well, the problem was that they were seeing that this unit wasn't getting anywhere. Because until you have witnesses that can walk you through the crime scene, that were there, that actually saw the crime being committed, you don't have anything. And the best evidence you can get, more so than even a fingerprint, is a human. Because a human can tell you what it smelled like in there, what he heard in there, who was there, and what was done. So the best evidence you can have of any crime, and I've been a cop for over 30 years in law enforcement, is the human source. But you have to make sure that the human source can be corroborated. Okay. You just don't go what the human source is telling you. Then you say, okay, let's see if we have witnesses, fingerprints, if we have hair that was removed from there. A lot of people don't know this, but when we're sitting in a place like this, hairs are falling off of our bodies. Mm-hmm. They can, through these hairs, they can place me here. And of course, through fingerprints and other types of evidence, which is corroborative evidence. But you need the human source. Yeah. Because like I said, he's got his whole five senses. You can ask him, what did it smell like in there? What color were the walls? Okay, but here's the thing that I found out, especially in investigating the murder of Kiki, that one source doesn't do it. You need to have other sources that were also there, and you have to keep those sources compartmentalized, separated, to see if those sources that were at the same place basically tell you the same thing, means corroborate the other source. And in the Camarena case, I didn't have one source, I had four sources, so, to include even a CIA operative.
So for those viewing this episode who just landed from Mars, I think this is a good time to introduce Enrique Camarena, also known as Kiki Camarena. And I'd like for you, since you're the one that is familiar with this, I know who he is like anybody else in this country. Horrible story. But I want you to tell the audience, how did you meet Kiki? What can you tell me about Kiki before the horrible incident?
Kiki, I met him before he was even in Guadalajara. I had met Kiki years back when he was assigned to the Fresno DEA office before he went to Guadalajara. When he was at Fresno, he would come into the LA division where I was assigned and bring in sources of information and cases, and he'd go undercover in LA or what have you, and that's how I met Kiki. Now, what's important for people to know is that right before Kiki was kidnapped, I was ordered to investigate a heroin trafficking family out of Indio. And I didn't have sources because when you are going to do a wiretap, let's say at an organization, you have to take sources before a magistrate or a judge that's going to issue the warrant for you to be able to, or the affidavit of the warrant, on a wiretap. I didn't have the sources, but I had known, excuse me, that Kiki had worked Calexico before he went to Fresno. But I knew he was in Guadalajara, so I called him and I said, Kiki, I said, I need some information to get fresh evidence against this Mexican heroin trafficking organization in Indio, California. And I know you had some sources. Who can you recommend, meaning informants, that could actually bring me up to date and get him in there so that I can get him before a judge to get a wiretap affidavit signed? And he said, and I can mention their names, this is Arroyo and his brother, I forget his name right now, but anyway, the two brothers. And Catalino Nunez. He says, Catalino Nunez and Arroyo, they're from that area, they'll know everybody. So he put me in touch with them. And I was working with those two informants, and I was able to get the wiretap affidavit so that I could go on a wiretap on this organization. And I was talking to Kiki regularly on the phone. One day, while this is going on, and I'm working now out of the Riverside office over here in Riverside, California, I'm at the gym, and a flash comes on TV. Agent kidnapped in Mexico. And they showed Kiki's picture. And I knew right there, I felt it in my gut. The cartel must have picked him up. We're not going to get him, probably not going to get him alive now. They've taken him. He's gone.
How many years had you been working for DEA yourself at that point?
At that point, I had probably been on DEA for like 10 years, 10 to 12 years.
And how long after you saw that news flash were you assigned? And can you explain how that progressed?
Well, I volunteered to go to Mexico to look for him because they were getting Hispanic agents to go and look for him. But because I was assigned that very important wiretap, the DEA out of Washington said, no, you don't go, Hector. You stay with that because you're running that task force over there to get those heroin traffickers, and they were significant. They were bringing in kilos of heroin.
Yeah.
You stay back for now. So I didn't go right then. But then, as they started to investigate, I got done with that case, and then I was undercover back. They sent me undercover back to Mexico to see what I could find out undercover through my sources on Kiki's murder. This is when they brought me back, the New York task force, and asked me about how the corruption was in Mexico. By then, I had, of course, been involved in numerous arrests and shootouts and what have you. Because when I was sent to Mexico, I was ordered out of Washington to go in there and try to get the main drug lords that were involved in Kiki's murder. And my orders were try to get him arrested. And we know there's corruption now, so they might not arrest him. And if you can't arrest him, at least try to eliminate him. And when they say eliminate to me, you know what that means to me.
Right, right.
So that's what I did. I went back to Mexico, and I was trying to do this when I was involved in a major operation where we killed some very significant drug lords, and the drug lords then gave orders to pick me up. And they almost picked up my wife and daughter down there because I was down there in Mexico with my wife and daughter in Mazatlan, Sinaloa. So then it's when I got evacuated, and they said, you got to leave Mexico, they're going to kill you. Because there was all over CIA wiretaps and everything else, and the drug lords saying, did you get him, did you get him? Me, Hector, they knew where I lived and everything, so they said, you're too hot, get out. So when I came out, they said, stay in Phoenix, Arizona, enjoy yourself for about a month. We'll reassign you to an office in the States.
This is after you were assigned to work the Kiki Camarena
No,
case?
this is when I'm undercover working.
Ah, yes.
There's undercover, and then there's when you're assigned openly.
Right.
Okay, so I'm waiting for assignment, and I get a call from the DEA officers. Come to the office because the director of DEA wants to talk to you. He wants you to call him.
Mhm.
I thought it was a joke. I thought it could be one of my DEA friends just wanted me to talk to him.
Yeah.
So they gave me a number, and I called it out of the DA office, and a lady answered, Office of the Administrator. What? This is no joke. So then the administrator of DEA came on the line and said, Hector, he says, thanks for doing a great job in Mexico. We had to get you out. But he said, I have a special assignment for you if you want to take it. And you've been highly recommended for it. So I'm going to ask you, do you want to take over the Kiki Camarena murder investigation? And I said, I'd be honored to. This is when I became overt in the United States in charge of the Camarena murder investigation, which was the Leyenda Task Force, which was basically given responsibility to investigate the kidnap, torture, and murder of Kiki Camarena.
Camarena. So let me ask you a question as we're progressing here chronologically. The professional officer that you were, the professional agent that you were with DEA at the time, knew that you were proceeding a certain way personally. And I can tell you this as being a previous member of a criminal organization. If something happened to one of our guys, if he was killed by a rival, for example, vengeance was number one on our agenda. Forget anything else, vengeance. So cops, to me, are almost the same except they're on the good side of the fence. Supposed to be anyway. All right. Tell me your mindset, yours and your fellow agents, those of you who knew Kiki or even knew what had happened and were gung-ho maybe to pursue, to work with you. What was Hector Berrellez's feelings at that time? How did you feel about pursuing Kiki's murders?